Blog Talk Radio.
The Black Authors Network, the most stimulating literary experience on the airwaves. www.blackauthorsnetworkradio.com. You are now tuned into the Black Authors Network.
Hello, and welcome to the Black Authors Network radio show. This is your host, Ella Curry. Tonight, we are celebrating Black Books Weekend. We have a full lineup of phenomenal panel discussions, author readings, and book club discussions. This is our program geared towards bringing readers snippets from books to consider given as holiday gifts. As you listen to tonight's show, take note of the authors and the books that we're discussing tonight. And really and truly consider giving some of the books, multiple copies of the books, as gifts this holiday season. Many of you are book club owners. We would like for you to consider having these authors as your book of the month as we move into 2012. And also, please remember to tell at least 10 people about tonight's show. We have our first panel titled Lost Mind, Lost Chances, Mentoring Our Brothers. I have brought together 9 speakers from all areas of the literary world to talk about encouraging and supporting and inspiring our young men to do better in life. Each book and each speaker that's going to be on our first panel is geared towards encouraging our young people on to greater futures. So stay right here. Keep it locked in from 7 o'clock until 11 o'clock tonight. Okay, so now we are ready to start our panel discussion, Lost Mind, Lost Chances, Mentoring for Our Brothers. I'm going to start at the top of the phone lines and call on each of our panelists and allow them to tell you how their book or their work in the community affects our young men in the community. We are going to start with DJ Rocky. Welcome to the show, Rocky.
Thank you. How you doing, Miss Ella?
I am doing fantastic. So I understand that you work in the education system. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how your line of work affects the young people in our community.
For 3 years, I taught high school English, and I worked very, very closely with young African-American students ages 14 to 19 in some cases. And there was a lot of mentoring involved in there, especially being a young black woman myself. I was not that far off from them. So it was really easy for me to understand the things that they were going through, you know, those teenage troubles, and then kind of mentor them through it as I had just left that level myself. And now, as far as the music industry, I transitioned into media coaching, and the young men that I meet are usually within the range of maybe the 15 to 23 range, and with them, these artists, they just need help. They need help understanding how to do that code switch, how to understand the difference between when you're speaking at home or when you're speaking on a block and when you might be speaking in front of a camera for an interview.
Okay, fantastic. So when we get into the panel discussion, I would like for each of you to weigh in with your opinion of my questions and the comments made. So thank you, Rocky. Next up, we have April, Gabrielle. April.
Hi, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great. How are you? Am I
great.
pronouncing your name correctly?
April Gabrielle, that's it. That's
okay.
right.
So tell us how your book, The Myth of the Broken Home, affects the young people in our community, or maybe the parents.
Right. I appreciate this. Thank you so much for allowing me to come on your show and speak to your audience tonight. The book I wrote, The Myth of the Broken Home, is a guidebook for single parents. I wrote the book based on my own life as a single parent in America. I have a 23-year-old son who's a cellular molecular biology major and a teen daughter. And the reason why I wrote the book in the first place was a lot of criticism that goes with single-parent moms who are raising boys today in our community, and a lot of it comes from our own African-American men. The single mothers cannot raise boys, and so I totally disagree with that. And part of that in the book is I give a lot of explanations and a lot of tips on how that is done. Although I do agree with a lot that's said about our boys today in our communities, is that a lot of African-American women and women, period, who are raising boys, they do cower down to their boys when they get to a certain age. And I believe it's because they believe in the myth as well. And therefore, they don't take on the persona that they need to hold their young men accountable. And so part of what I do, and I have done, is I mentor families. I counsel and consult with families and teens. I'm a career mentor for the former foster youth. And so I see a lot of what's going on. And I have a master's degree in human behavior, psychology, and I'm pursuing a master's degree in criminal justice and law. So a lot of what I see is going on is coming from the home, and we need to be accountable to our homes.
Okay, fantastic. Dr. Darryl Green, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Ella, and the rest of the panel members. I'm glad to also be here to contribute. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. I work with young men. I actually have a book called Call to Destiny, which is a book about how to assist African-American boys in America. Myself and Evelyn Jenkin, who is a community activist, he actually he started a non-profit rites of passage program for boys age elementary to age 14. And so I'm heavily engaged. We do an all-males citywide conference, and just to give about 7 tips to help parents. I do think that the Afro-American male is being watered down. I think a lot of the things are accountability. Now, what amazes me is you have a lot of angry young boys. They're angry at their dad that he's not around. They're angry at their moms. A lot again, as April said, a lot of the today's Afro-American community live with the moms. And a lot of the boys angry at their moms, and so it's a lot of anger. I deal with it. I actually gave a conference at a parent conference that was a mixed Afro-Americans, over 400 people. This whole thing was angry young boys came out. I'm just looking at trying to mentor, try to help assist them. So that's really what my aim is, to try to better assist them. So I have 3 kids of my own. I have a 25-year-old son, a 19-year-old daughter, 20-year-old daughter at Hampton, and a young son that's 18 at North Carolina A&T. And we want to make sure that all the kids have somebody that they can, relate to that's being productive, and that's really what my concern is.
Okay, fantastic. So next up we have Mr. J.M. Benjamin. Welcome to the show, J.M.
Hey, what's going on, Ella? Good evening.
So, J.M., tell us, you have a nonfiction book that you put out that has done very well. So tell us about your work, and you've also been all over the newspaper different newspapers about your work with the inner city kids. So tell us about your book and how your work in the community relates to encouraging and inspiring our young people.
Well, the book you're referring to is actually titled From Incarceration to Incorporation. Basically, I served over 12 years of my life in prison, and it was in prison that I started writing and landed a publishing deal. So what I do now, since I've been home for the past 6 years, is I use what I acquired and the doors that I opened in the literary world, predominantly urban fiction, which is the genre that gave me a platform and a voice. I use that platform to reach our youth. The thing that I have in my favor is that I look how they look, I sound how they sound, and I come from what they come from. And as of now, I've mentored over 100, maybe even over 200 at-risk youth since the year of 2006. But basically what I do is I promote and encourage them to make better choices and decisions, and what comes behind the consequences and repercussions behind making poor choices and decisions. Basically just using my writing to show that you can turn a negative situation into a positive opportunity, which is what I've done. I show in the community, particularly and specifically our young people, but also ex-offenders, black males and black females, or just men and women in general who have been incarcerated or are children or product of the incarcerated, and just showing them that it's never too late and that it is doable. I heard the brother speaking about, the lack of the fathers and young black males' lives, and I heard the sister speak about, how mothers can raise young black males. I'm in accord with both of those individuals, but I just speak from a different perspective as far as showing that, what happens when our young youth are unattended, and as well as misguided, by the streets, and how you can overcome.
Okay, fantastic, J.M. And I have to say that I met you about 4 or 5 years ago, and I am so proud of your progress with New Quality Publishing. At one point you had a bookstore, and you travel around the country. I've been at several events with you, and you speak so well. And the one thing I appreciate so much, J.M., is your support of me. Whenever I call on you, you show up, so thank you.
Well, thank you, definitely. I appreciate that.
Okay, so next up we have Mr. Patrick Oliver of Say It Loud Readers and Writers. Mr. Patrick Oliver is a social change agent, and he's also has been the host and moderator of quite a few of the panels at Congressional Black Caucus, at least the last 3 years I've been there. Welcome to the show, Patrick.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, Patrick, tell us about the work that goes on at Say It Loud Readers and Writers.
Okay. Well, first of all, again, thank you for having me, and shout out to my other guests, Brother Benjamin, Sister Lockett, Gabrielle, and Brother Green. It's a pleasure. I mean, I'm overwhelmed by such a company, so thank you for putting me in the company with these individuals. But, Say It Loud Readers and Writers since 1997, we have worked with communities all over the country to promote reading and writing as tools of empowerment. As we well know, for the teacher who was there, DJ Rocket, young people have to be literate in order to be successful in society today. I mean, not just reading books. I'm talking about literate. I'm talking about financial literacy. I'm talking about not technology literacy. So we really push that and promote that through a number of ways by hosting community-based office sessions, by having sessions in libraries, trying to get young people more versed about the library and what the library offers. Again, doing financial sessions with bankers, that sort of thing. So young people can, again, be a lot more literate than they are now, because we're trying to push young people to be future business owners. So like the sister was talking about code switching, we want them to be able to, switch up and consider being a business owner, switch up and consider being a doctor, switch up and consider being a lawyer. So all these things, we push through reading, and again, we do that through working with businesses, in school, after school programs, work at colleges and universities. This past summer, we worked with a medical school to help improve the scores of those students who were registered in med school. So our thing is collaboration and partnerships. And I also host a radio show called Literary Nation that comes on every Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, where we highlight writers from around the country. So in a nutshell, that's what Say It Loud and does, and that's what I do.
Fantastic. And you saying that like, oh, that's just what I do. But that's a lot of encouragement and inspiration for our young people. And I wanted to really shine the spotlight on the people who are in the trenches working out there. I know sometimes people, I had a gentleman, 97 years old, on my Black History Month program to tell me the village is dead. And I don't feel that way. I don't feel that way. We may be a little spread out now, and we have some work to do to bring us back all in, but I don't think the village is dead. Our next speaker is Moses Miller. He has a book titled The Barack and Me. So, and I've witnessed Moses speak at a lot of events, and I know he does a lot of work in the community. So welcome to the show, Moses.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
So tell us how your book, The Barack and Me, helps and encourages our young people.
Well, the Barack in me really was inspired by me just going on a book tour when Barack Obama was running for president and going to different areas around the country and seeing and understanding the fact that even if we had an African-American president, that there were youth that I was talking to that were living in situations with poverty and high crime rates, that it wasn't going to be enough just to see somebody like themselves in that office. So the front of the book, it says, where I am does not determine who I am. There's greatness that exists within my inner soul. It's time that I unleash the Barack in me, meaning that greatness that exists within you, because sometimes we tend to see greatness in others before we see it in ourselves. And actually, through my company, I do around 5 or 6 mentoring programs with African-American and Latino males from elementary through high school. I do a diversion program to reduce the recidivism rates of our youth that have recently been released from incarceration, to reduce their, the rate of them returning to prison. And I've been involved in quite a few programs. That's one of the key things besides writing. I think that it's important that we all play a role in reaching back and pulling others forward and just being a positive example for our youth coming up.
Fantastic. Let me check the phone lines and see if this is an author I'm expecting. Caller from 970, welcome to the show. Are you a reader or author?
This is an author. This is Dr. Dew in Colorado.
Hello.
I just saw your information, and I wanted to check out your program.
Okay.
To know this, it's beautiful what I'm hearing so far. It's wonderful to be able to connect with others.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and feel more than welcome to jump in on the conversation as we talk about different areas of social change. And so I'm going to just jump right into it. Moses opened up the first line of communication. Earlier in the week, Dr. Darryl Green and Tamika Williamson were on my show, and Tamika was giving some very alarming statistics about young people dropping out of school. And the fact that they didn't have an education and dropping out of school led to them, and most of them, not all, but some, leading to a life of crime. And she has a book that tries to help them get their lives back together and go to college. So I'm going to go down the line and ask each speaker, how do they feel about the kids dropping out of school and later ending up into criminal activity? What are your opinions that we can do to kind of help them, encourage them? And this whole show is not about bashing them. We all know what the problems are. We want to really come up with some resolutions or offer the parents who are in the chat room and on the phone lines a resolution. So, with that being said, let's start with JM. JM, what do you see as something positive we can do, and what do you think about this dropout rate?
Well, as far as the dropout rate is concerned, this isn't just happening all of a sudden. This has been going on since I was a young youth, and the statistics continue to get higher and higher. As far as something positive that I can share with the parents and to our youth is, one, before I say this, I need to put this out there. There's a major disenfranchisement between adults and youth. You said it best. This is not about bashing. Generally, adults are talking at the kids. And when we were kids, we knew that if you talk at us like it flew right over our heads, we must go back to talking to our youth. And before we can talk to our young people, we must learn the language. And when I say the language, I don't mean ebonics or slang, like, dig, you know what I'm saying? I mean speaking the language to where our young people understand. Many of us as adults, we come from, and survived and overcame what our young people are going through. Maybe not specifically on what's going on, but generally, like we overcame these same adversities that our youth are struggling with. Rather than us sharing that with our children and with our young people, we shield it and hide it and just say, don't do that or don't do this. But how many of us actually sit the young people down or take the time out to explain to them why they shouldn't do it? So I believe in order for us to save more lives, we must educate our young people, and the only way that we can educate them is by learning to speak their language so that they can understand.
Okay, fantastic. Author David Miller sent out a statement in one of his previous emails that stated it was about the $1 Billion Man release. It's a document put out by the National Fatherhood Initiative, and it states that the federal government spends $99.8 billion a year on programs such as child support enforcement, anti-poverty efforts that support father-absent homes, and the report also states that half of all children, 80% of African-American children, can expect to spend at least part of their childhood living apart from their fathers. So I would like for Dr. Darryl Green and Patrick to speak on that. Does that play a part in these kids dropping out of school because there's no one kind of a strong male influence regulating them?
Yeah. Thank you. I think that's a very complicated question about why kids drop out of school. I wrote an article on that. I think for me, just being in the trenches, I think kids, not just black kids, but a lot of kids hate school. I mean, that was one of the questions I did a presentation a couple of weeks ago on. I asked how many kids hate school. A lot of them raised their hand, and I've been in the classroom. Students are not engaged. Teachers don't challenge them, and then you don't feel a part. So I think there's and if the kid goes to a school where they're the minority, that's even worse in terms of how they deal with that. So I think it's a whole gamut of things. But in terms of what we can do, I challenge black professionals, blacks, to go to the schools, start at the elementary level, build a relationship, go talk to those students maybe once a week or once a month, so that they see that there's a black individual doing better. And for that case, it can be a male or female. I just think a lot of times in our schools, we don't see the best of blacks doing those things. Michelle Obama are too far away. So I just think starting at the very lowest level, preschool, elementary school, being engaged. I think students, you can't save all kids, but you can make a difference in at least one kid's life. So that's what one of the tidbits I would share.
Okay, so Patrick Oliver.
In terms of dropout, we have to make sure young people understand what school does. We have a project. We work with schools. It's called Reading and Writing for Success. We connect reading and writing in school with success. Letting young people clearly understand, if you, in fact, don't learn how to read and write, that you're not going to make it in society, that the only hope for you is that pipeline to prison. We also make that clear with their parents. And we also tell their parents either they get it now or you're going to have a 25-year-old living in your house or you're going to be visiting a 25-year-old in prison. So we make sure that everybody understands that the school is for a purpose. It is for young people to learn, how to be productive citizens. And that's the thing that we have to do. And for us to not have answers, for the richest, most educated generation of black folks in history, and here we are coming behind us, is the most highly illiterate group of young people in history.
Wow. We
have to really check ourselves in some cases. What are we not doing? If the folks that came before us, my grandmother and my grandfather, were high school educated, many of the folks I'm on the phone with them quite sure they have grandparents who were high school educated, particularly if they were from the South, and they were able to put the thirst for knowledge in their children. And here we are today, again, with PhDs, masters, and we can't put the thirst for knowledge into our kids. We can't come up with ways to do that. sometimes we have to maybe do a self-check amongst adults and not say what's wrong with your children, what's wrong with the adults, if we can't come up with remedies, ways, and resolutions to address the ills of our children.
Fantastic, great. So, April and DJ Rocky, I'd like for you, Rocky works in the school system, and April, you've mentioned that you have some degrees dealing with psychology. Do you think that some of this, like we're talking about education and leading up to them making wrong decisions, does some of this have to do with disabilities, like learning disabilities? Or are we using that as an excuse more often than not?
This is April Gabrielle speaking. I've seen it both ways. And first, let me say that coming from as a single mom and having two very successful children in school, I have a large, intensive chapter on education. And as parents, being an advocate for your child. Because being an advocate for your child, especially for those of us in the African-American community, and I think the young brother said a few minutes ago, if our children are minorities at that school, you better be up there. Because there are many times Latino and African-American boys alone are discriminated against. And I just want to read the first paragraph under creating independent learners, because it starts when they're young. One of the most important aspects that you want your children to gain from their education is to become independent, responsible learners. Yes, you want them to own their education and not expect anyone to help them any more than they are willing to help themselves. As single parents, we cannot always rely on the educational system to teach our children everything or how to move through it. Decades after Brown versus the Board of Education, our educational system remains very classist and racially divided. So yes, it's imperative that you get involved with your children's education beyond picking them up and dropping them off at school. Since my children were in kindergarten, I've always put in more than 110% to make sure I instilled this important role that they must play to receive their best education. And it goes on, but one thing I've always taught my children is that the teachers are there for you. You're not there for them. Your teachers are there. They have a job because of you. Now, when my son would come to the car when I picked him up from school, I'd roll on in there. He's sitting in front of the office doing his homework, and he got in the car. He says, Mom, I don't know how to do this. Did you ask your teacher? No. Well, guess what? Haul yourself back out there to the bungalows. I'm going to park in this car, and you go ask your teacher. Because the goal is to empower our children at a young age, and even if they're not young, to know that you are in those seats. People have died and shed blood for you to sit in those seats. They owe you an education. And don't you ever think twice that you cannot earn this education.